So in this video, I'm going to walk you guys through how to compute the sum of the square residuals and explain what the purpose of this is. So I've pulled up my stat lab and pulled up an example problem. And so the first thing you want to do is draw the scatter diagram. It says by hand, but you can use technology. And so I'm going to show you guys how to use StatCrunch. So what you want to do is come up here to the double rectangles and left click on it and then click open in StatCrunch. And you want your pop-up blocker turned off so that your pop-ups are enabled. And then once that is pulled up, you're going to click Stat, Regression, and then Simple Linear. And then select your X variable, which is your independent variable, which in this case is X. And then your Y variable, which is Y, which is our dependent variable. Or our response variable, the X variable is our explanatory variable. Right? And then you can just ignore all of this, and this is just building a habit. Under graphs, you want to do fitted line plot, and then scroll down and hit the control button on your keyboard, and while holding that down, you want to select residuals versus X values. So if you scroll back up, you'll notice both of those are now highlighted. Right? And under save, you want to select residuals and then press the control button on your keyboard again, and while you're holding the control button down on your keyboard, click on predicted values. Once you've done that, you'll now hit the compute button. And now you'll notice that you have two additional columns in your StatCrunch sheet, and you have an output box, is what I call the output box. So you don't need all of this for now, but you may need them in a later section. So you'll notice that it gives you several things. Don't need all of this for now. So if you go over at the top, you'll notice it says 1 of 3. So if we press the over button, we have more screens. So here you'll notice you have your scatter plot. Sometimes this doesn't look like your multiple choice answers in my stat lab. That's perfectly fine. You just want to match the one that best corresponds to your data. Right? So we can see here, this is probably not a good fit because it's 0 to 20. We have 0 to 10 and then 0 to about 10. So we can see that these two graphs probably are not a good fit. Well, this graph's not a good fit, right? And this one goes up too far, and so we're looking at these two graphs. So we kind of zoom in here, and then we can kind of match our data. Right? So we have 2, 1 as our point, so you can immediately tell that this graph does not work, right? So we're over at 2, and then we went up 2, so that graph doesn't work. So let's go to this next graph here. So we're at 2, 1, and then our next point's at 3, 3, so that looks good. And then we're at 4, 4. And then just going to spot check another one. So at 9, 10, 10, 9, 8, 7. And then this is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And then we're halfway between. So there's our graph here. The next thing we would do is find the equation of the line containing the 2 points. So what we're first going to do is just pick 2 points, say the first and the last one, and find the equation using those 2 points. So I'm going to come over here to a blank piece of paper, so to speak. And so I have my 2 points here. So I'm just going to write my points down. And there's several different ways to do this. Right, so I'm going to label my points. X1, Y1. Right, so the first ordered pair is X, and the second ordered part of the pair is Y. So X1, Y1, and then X2, Y2. And our slope we represent with the letter M. So we're going to calculate our slope as the change in Y over the change in X, right? So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And then sometimes you'll also see it written as delta y over delta x. And all this means is just change in y over change in x. So now we're going to find our slope. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we get 10 over 5, and 10 divided by 5 is 2, right? So now we have our slope. Right? So probably the easiest way to do this is to use slope-intercept form. So y equals mx plus b. So this is what we call slope-intercept form, which is the main form that we use in statistics. Slope-intercept form of a line, right? So we're just going to pick a point. Right? Come back up here. And so I'm just going to pick this point. I'm going to label it x, y. So I'm going to take this point here, and my slope, which is m, and I'm going to plug in to those 3 spots and solve for b. Right, so y is 1, m is 2, and x is 2, and I'm going to solve for b. Right, so m times x is 4, right, and to solve for b I need to subtract, right, so it's positive, so I'll subtract. Right, so 1 minus 4 is negative 3, so b is 3. So now I have m and b, so my equation is y equals mx plus b. Right, so now I'm going to substitute those in. So y equals 2x plus negative 3. And typically you're used to simplifying this in this form, and I think it probably doesn't input it that way. But let's check. I'm going to pull this up in our homework here. Right, so 2x here. So I'm going to input my 2 here, and then since it says plus, we're going to type in negative 3 here. And then we're going to graph the line on the scattered diagram. So again, you can just kind of look through this to go through that, or what you can do is use your calculator and then put the points over. I think it's easier just to kind of look at it. And so we know where our points were plotted before, right? And so you can just kind of look at the graphs and look at the points and figure that out before. So we know that going over to 20 is too much, so we can eliminate that. And this one starts up too far, and then here we're supposed to be at 2, 1. So again, we know this graph is wrong. And so that leaves A as the only possibility. Alright, so I'm going to do that one here. And then we want to determine the least squared regression line. This is by hand, but let's use technology. Again, that's a lot easier. Otherwise, you're having to find 2 standard deviations by hand, and it gets complicated. So we go back to StatCrunch. If I go back to the previous screen that I had, it actually gives you the equation, but you'll notice this is in y equals b plus mx form. Another way you can do it is come down to this table here, and it gives you the slope and the intercept. So I'm going to put my slope in front of x, right? Y equals mx plus b. So our slope is m, and we want to round to 3 decimal places. So be careful when you're asked to round. It may change that. So we have 2.023. So 2.023. And then we want our intercept, so negative 3.302. So negative 3.0. Nope, 302. 302. This was a good idea to be writing these down, and that way you're not having to flip back and forth, and it actually takes less time, right? So then we want to graph the least squared regression line. So StatCrunch does this for us. So we can look here, again, that's on the second screen, and kind of look by the pictures here to see that. And again, you can eliminate, so we know we don't need to go over to 20 here. We also know that 2, 1 should be a point. And so you can kind of look at those choices, but then we also notice here that these 2 points are above, below, and then these are right close to the line. So we can see, right, those are, looks like they're on the line. So again, this one is the best fit here. Alright, so we want to compute the sum of the squared residuals for the line found in part B. This we cannot do in StatCrunch and have to do it by hand. I think it's easiest to do it in Excel, so let's do that. So what you want to do is click here and then click Open in Excel so that it copies over your data. And I'm going to open this up. And while I'm waiting on that, I'm going to maybe scroll back up to my equation in part B here. I'm going to click Enable Editing, and I'm going to minimize this, right? So what I'm going to type in C, actually I'm going to go in above 1, and I'm going to right click and click Insert. I'm going to give these labels. So B is what we call the observed values. So I'm going to type that in. And then in C, we're going to create what we call the predicted values. And that is what we call Y hat. And so I'm going to pull this over. So what that actually looks like here. So Y hat as a symbol is Y with a little rooftop there. So Y hat right, and I'm going to put the predicted values in. So Y hat in this case is going to be 2x and then minus, right, plus a negative is minus 3, right, and then I'm going to expand my column. So all we're going to do is we're going to equals, right? And so if I were doing this by hand, I would take 2 and then plug in my x value. So I'm going to pull this up here. See what we're doing. All right. So if I were going to do this by hand, I would plug in my x values, right? So I'm going to over here, right? So I would take 2 and then minimize, oops. Get those minimized here. Minimize this, so I'm going to do 2, and then I'm plugging in each of my x values. So 2 times 2 minus 3, 2 times the next x value, which is 3 minus 3. Right, so that's the same thing we're going to do in Excel. Right, and so I have the first one, right? So I'm doing 2 times the x value minus 3, right? But in Excel, the good thing is I can just press Enter, oops, and like you've done in a previous lab, I can come to the corner, look for the black plus, and drag it down. Okay. So just come to the corner and drag down to the bottom, and it'll calculate all of those for us. Right. So I'm going to stop there and pick up with this in the next part of the video.